This is so different than anything I've ever done before, but it's also really related to everything that I've done in my life and everything that makes me excited about telling stories. Daughter of the Deep is about a young girl, Anna Dakkar, who goes to a very special school for marine sciences. And she finds out that she has a family legacy that is every bit as complicated as Percy Jackson's is. But Anna's legacy has to do with science, not with mythology. The idea for this originally came from the books of Jules Verne, in particular, two that are called The Mysterious Island and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Jules Verne, it's easy to not understand how sort of revolutionary he was. Jules Verne was a French writer back in the 1800s, and he was really one of the first people to pioneer and be successful in the kind of writing that we now call science fiction. So who was Captain Nemo? Captain Nemo, according to Jules Verne, was an Indian noble. He was someone who lived during the time of the British Raj, when the colonial power of Great Britain ruled India and with a very firm hand. And the Indians, for obvious reasons, were very resentful of this. Nemo's original name was Prince Dakkar. We don't know much about him, but it is indicated in Verne's novels that the British got back at Prince Dakkar for being a rebel by killing his family. Now, obviously, that turned him bitter. Captain Nemo was born. Prince Dakkar went underground. He changed his name to the alias Nemo. Nemo slash Prince Dakkar is incredibly rich, brilliant. He knows so many languages. He knows so much about science. He is centuries ahead of his time. And because of his bitterness and his hatred of the colonial powers, he decides he will never set foot on dry land again. He will never be subject to any nation's laws. He will become a law unto himself. He secretly puts together the massively high-tech submarine, the Nautilus. And he decides to gather a crew to him and travel the oceans of the world, wreaking havoc on the colonial powers. He's going to sink their ships. He's going to disrupt their trade. He's going to explore the bottom of the ocean, live self-sufficiently from the food sources there. As I always do with my books, I ask a bunch of questions like, what if? What if the Nautilus was still sunken somewhere down there? What if Captain Nemo's entire family wasn't killed and some of his descendants lived on? What would happen if Nemo's descendants were still around today? What would they be faced with? And is it possible that that Nautilus submarine might still be more advanced, even after 200 years, than anything modern man has been able to come up with? So I started playing around with these ideas. And I have been thinking about this novel for probably 15 years. Finally, it occurred to me that the descendant needed to be a young woman, Anna Dakkar. She carries the name of Prince Dakkar, but she's not really sure if that's fiction or is it real or is it just a coincidence that she has that name. She is, however, very good at underwater exploration, and she goes to a school called Harding-Pencroft Academy, which is known for the marine sciences. It's based on the California coast, and it's divided into 4 houses: dolphin, cephalopod, orca, and shark, depending on what your specialization is going to be. Dolphins, like the animals, are very curious. They like to explore. They're great at communication. And so that is where Anna fits in. She's a linguist. She's great at other languages, at code breaking, and at exploration. Cephalopods are, like squids and octopuses, problem solvers with those 8 legs and that big brain and that curiosity. They love taking things apart and putting them back together again. So they are the engineers, they're the builders, they're the innovators. Sharks. Well, sharks are military, they are fighters, they are into defense and offense, they are leaders of all kinds, they are fearless. Makes sense for a shark. And orcas, also fierce fighters, but orcas really are interesting animals because they have such a sense of community. Orcas really are all about the pod. And so I saw orcas as being more about social interaction, more about handing down the memories of the past generations. They would be the librarians, the historians, the archivists, the teachers, also the healers. They are the ones that sort of hold the whole community of Harding-Pencroft Academy together. So I came up with all of this on my own. Harding-Pencroft itself is based on something that happened in the mysterious island. I don't want to give it away, but the names are meaningful. And after I created Anna Dakkar, I decided, okay, let's have a cast of characters from these 4 houses that may not all get along, but that need to come together to solve this incredible crisis that happens almost on page 1 of Daughter of the Deep. One of my favorite characters, aside from Anna herself, is Gemini Twain. Gemini Twain is an interesting guy. He is from House Shark. He's actually the freshman prefect of the house. He's all about military strategy. He's an expert marksman. He knows defense and offense. He's a natural leader and very courageous. But he is something of a rule follower. And that is going to set him at odds with Anna a little bit, who, as an explorer and as a code breaker, is more about pushing the boundaries. So how they get along is going to be really central to the book. So that's a look at some of the main characters. But let's be honest, one of the main things that attracted me to the legend of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was also the machine itself, the submarine, the Nautilus. I love subs, and researching for this book, I found out a lot of things about the history of submarines and how they function that just blew me away. They are so incredibly interesting and difficult and sometimes dangerous. They go back hundreds and hundreds of years, but they were so dangerous for so long. And in the time that Jules Verne was writing, these were cutting edge technology, and they still didn't work very well. I do take my research very seriously, which is why when I wanted to write this book, even years ago, I was already planning for it. I decided, okay, if I'm going to write about going under the sea, I need to actually do it. And so let's take a look at some of my really in-depth research.
Excited to go diving?
Oh, I'm totally excited.
So, as you can tell, I had a lot of fun scuba diving. I learned a lot, but I'm still not a professional. I just sort of know what I know, and I have a sense for what it is like to explore underwater. However, in order for me to really write this book, Daughter of the Deep, and make it resonate, I knew I needed to go to an expert. Now, little did I know that the person who would agree to fact check the book for me was none other than Dr. Bob Ballard, known to the world as the guy who discovered the wreck of Titanic, but who is an ocean explorer far beyond just that one event. He is possibly the foremost expert on ocean exploration of our time. And so I got to sit down with him after he had read the book and I'd gotten his notes, and I got to talk about how he got interested in the ocean and what he thought about Daughter of the Deep. Here are some of the highlights. You got to name your own ship, the Nautilus, and I think that's what we're seeing behind you. Is that right?
Yep, that's the Nautilus steaming to the rescue. This is a live feed. We just dropped a couple vehicles, so we're steaming to the rescue to bring up some underwater vehicles from around 7,000 feet. And then we'll be heading to explore the 50% of America that lies beneath the sea. We own more land underwater than any other nation on Earth. It's called our exclusive economic zone. It represents 50% of America. Yet we have better maps of Mars than half the United States. So we're trying to do something about that right now.
Wow, I had no idea. That's fascinating. I hear that you refer to yourself as Captain Nemo, and you named your ship the Nautilus. So obviously, Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was important to you. Can you talk about how it inspired you?
Well, being dyslexic, I didn't read the book. And then at 12 years old, growing up in California, out comes the movie. And I went to the movie and that was it. I mean, it just boom. And then, as you know, my parents asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, Captain Nemo. And they didn't laugh. They didn't go off in the other room and said, Houston, we have a problem. But so I never grew up.
I love how you talk in your memoir about training dolphins for a summer. And you gave me a lot of helpful notes, too, about dolphins for Daughter of the Deep. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Well, it's like humans. You have smart ones and you have not so smart ones. I've trained a lot of critters, but dolphins, you cross over a threshold where it's almost scary how close they are to you emotionally and intellectually. It got to where fish reward was not important. It was just, did we love one another? And it would do anything for me if I could just communicate with it.
The book Into the Deep, again, if you guys want to read a real life adventure that has to do with the ocean, can't recommend it highly enough. Reading your book, it struck me that underwater exploration and modern oceanography really have only taken place in my own lifetime. Are there things that you would say, advice you would give to young people who want to be the next Dr. Ballard, who want to explore the wonders of the sea?
Well, don't skip around mathematics. Don't skip around your physical sciences. I get literally, I may not get as many letters as you do, but I get thousands and thousands of letters from kids.
Oh,
and
sure you do.
I would say 90% of them want to be a biologist because they want to dart around the physical sciences, math and physics. I quadruple majored in math, physics, chemistry, and geology, which sort of made me a Swiss Army knife. But I would recommend you base yourself in the physical sciences. That way, when I dream things, they're possible. Because my dreaming is bound by the laws of physics, which are the coolest laws you could have. Apply throughout the universe. That's a pretty big place.
You talked already about the fact that you are dyslexic yourself and how you had to compensate. And I'm not sure if you know, but in Percy Jackson's world, dyslexia is a sign that you're a demigod. So I guess you could consider yourself lucky.
Walt Disney was dyslexic, so we're in with good company,
Absolutely, yeah. So Yeah, I mean, and that is something that you've known all along, or is it something that you
No,
just came to
very,
realize?
very recent. You know, being born in 1942, a word didn't exist that I know of. And I just knew I had trouble reading. And my mother got a tutor for me in the morning in elementary school. And I was able to develop coping mechanisms because I did well in school and, you know, got a PhD and all that. But I went down a road unknowingly that's pro-dyslexic, and that is working in the dark. But I didn't discover it till I was driving to the university. I had to give a lecture, and I heard on NPR radio they were interviewing the authors of The Dyslexic Advantage. Got the book FedEx to me, and when I got it, I stayed up all night into the next day because I don't read real fast. And I cried because it was like, it explained me to me for the first time in my life. And I was 62 when I discovered what I am. And then I found I'm not alone. And there's a lot of pretty cool people that are dyslexic. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool group to be in with. So like I say, Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg, Ted Turner, Richard Branson, you know, Einstein. These are not bad, you know, bad rap sheet.
Not bad at all. You're in a good club.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Bob Ballard, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today and for your consultation for Daughter of the Deep. It was so very kind. Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. That was an incredible conversation, an incredible honor. And remember, if you want to find out more about Bob Ballard's adventures, you can get his book, Into the Deep. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's fantastic. So not only have I gotten to do research through my own scuba exploration and from talking to a preeminent expert, I've also had access to some great videos from the National Geographic archives. Here's one of my favorites.
Today's office includes a submarine in the middle of the Galapagos. I would dare say that I have one of the coolest jobs in the world. A mola mola! There's only one animal that swims like that. I'm in the Galapagos with the National Geographic Pristine Seas team. We're going in a submarine right now because it allows us to go deeper to an area that's never been explored before. We need to make sure that we understand what's down there so that we can work hard to protect it. The submarine actually gives off electromagnetic field which attracts sharks.
Oh, fantastic! They're very curious around here.
We just had a silky shark at just 12 meters, so I can't wait to get down at 300 and see what we find.
I'm going to reach the deep zone. Copy?
The sea floor is dark, so when a giant machine is down there with lights, organisms get curious.
Oh my gosh, swordfish! Holy cow!
Out of the blue, this swordfish just comes charging in at our lights, and we see a flash of silver.
Oh my gosh! Don't stab us!
And it was an exhilarating experience.
Beautiful swordfish.
And then it's gone. Not only are the Galapagos a biologist's dream,
It's truly mesmerizing.
but I had the ability to do this with two other women. We might have been the youngest all-female team down in a submarine.
We should set a goal of trying to find 3 new species, one for each of us.
I've never felt as much like an explorer than I do right now. There's something about being 1,000 feet under the water where no one else has actually ever been that feels, I don't know, like true exploration.
That is one of my favorite videos. The youngest all-female crew ever to go down to the bottom of the ocean in the Galapagos. And I'm really glad that swordfish didn't stab them. But as if writing Daughter of the Deep wasn't thrilling enough for me, there's also so much else going on in the Riordan verse. We have the Rick Riordan Presents imprint, which continues to just be incredible and blow me away all the time. We have adaptations happening for TV and film, and we have some new books coming out in Percy's world. Wow, wait until you hear the news. So to start with, Rick Riordan Presents. So far, we have 14 authors signed to be part of the imprint. Some have been published already, some have not yet, but they're coming up. 9 series have been published to date. 9 have been optioned for TV or movies in various places, so I'll look out for that. 34 starred reviews have been garnered by all of the titles put together. That's unheard of. That is so much wonderful, wonderful feedback and accolades for these incredible books. And frankly, it's well deserved. They're great. And they have spent 45 combined weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. So to say that the Rick Riordan Presents authors are knocking it out of the ballpark, that's a bit of an understatement. In particular, we have a wonderful book, Pahua and the Soul Stealer, which is based on Hmong mythology, which I have to say I didn't know anything about until Lori M. Lee gave me this manuscript and let me into this incredibly rich and fantastic world. You have nature spirits, we've got dragons and demons, we have a snarky cat who's a sidekick who talks. I mean, what more could you want in a book? Oh, wait, you want great writing, fantastic characters, and real page-turning action? Yeah, Lori has that too. This is going to be the first of 3 books in this series. It's available now. Pahua and the Soul Stealer. What can I say? You have to read this book. And also available now, The Cursed Carnival and Other Calamities. Now, these are short stories that are collected from all of the different Rick Riordan Presents authors. All of them are about interesting and sort of unexpected heroes. And there's even a story from me in the book that is my first foray into one of the mythologies that I've always wanted to write about, but never have before, Irish mythology. The Celtic myths are incredible, and I have spent the last few years studying them. This is my first attempt to bring one of the great myths into the modern day, the story of Finn McCool. This is his origin story. So you can only find it in Cursed Carnival, and there are so many other amazing stories. If you want a smorgasbord of different heroic tales from all of the imprint authors, this is it. Also available now, this is the 3rd novel in Kwame Mbalia's series. Tristan, our hero, is going to go into the ring with King Cotton for the last time. This journey through the US, through history, through African American folklore and mythology, through these amazing stories and this amazing heritage, this is going to bring our wonderful cast of characters to their final conclusion. I don't want these stories to end. Kwame has done such an incredible job with Tristan Strong. Also coming up from Rick Riordan Presents, I am delirious about this. I love Yoon Ha Lee's novel, Dragon Pearl, because it was such an original and fresh take on Korean mythology mixed with science fiction. I had never seen anything quite like that before. And I have to admit, it did inspire me to finally go back and try my hand at science fiction with Daughter of the Deep. So Yoon Ha Lee, thank you very much, because you helped me to get my present novel into the world. Dragon Pearl, however, was a standalone. And although I love standalones, I was really sad to leave behind this universe of the Thousand Worlds. And so I was incredibly excited when Yoon agreed to come back to the imprint and do a sort of a spin-off sequel for us called Tiger Honor. So thank goodness we get to go back to the Thousand Worlds for another Korean-inspired science fiction adventure. You are going to love it. And of course, another kind of bittersweet announcement in terms of imprint news, the final Arusha book. How is this possible? But the 5th and final book, Arusha and the Nectar of Immortality, is coming out in April. This will finally bring Arusha and all of her Pandava friends, their incredibly epic adventures, to a conclusion. And I don't know if I'm ready to say goodbye to this world. You may know that Rosh Chokshi, she started the imprint. She was our debut author, and she really set the standards so high for everything that came after her. And everyone has sort of looked to that series as kind of a model and sort of an example of what could be done. And of course, they've all risen to the challenge and done their own thing and been amazing. But Arusha will always have a special place in my heart. So I kind of can't believe that we're finally coming to a conclusion of the series. But at the same time, I cannot wait to see how Rosh wraps everything up. And I hope that you are as excited as I am, because every book in the Arusha series has been better than the one before. And speaking of Arusha, this is the first part of the imprint that we've decided to turn into graphic novels. I have seen the sample pages for this. It's coming out in April along with the fifth Arusha book. The artwork, the way that it has been adapted by this team has just been stellar. For all of you graphic novel fans out there, I think you're going to be really, really pleased. Another fantastic thing that's coming from Riordan Presents, we have for the first time branched out into young adult territory. And the reason that we did this really is because of one particular author who wanted to explore this idea. I have always been a fan of Daniel Jose Older. I love his work. I love his style. He has such incredible range. He's written for adults. He's written for the middle grades. He's written for young adults. He's done murder mysteries. He's done fantasy. He's done incredible memoir and social commentary. And he manages to do all of this and bring in his own experiences, his own heritage and his own background. And he has such an incredible ear for both dialogue, for voice, for music. I'm not quite sure how he does it, but when he's cooking, boy, I mean, is quite an amazing meal. So our first young adult novel from Riordan Presents is going to be Ballad and Dagger, which will be the first of the Outlaw Saints series. How do you describe such a rich, incredibly well-crafted, original story? I'm not sure I can, but he draws on the urban fantasy sort of tradition. It's got elements of Santeria, of the Jewish culture, Caribbean culture, all things that have informed Daniel Jose Older's own life and his writing so far. He is always finding a way to be a trailblazer, and this is no exception. Ballad and Dagger is coming in May. Check it out. So that's a wrap up of what's going on with the Riordan Presents imprint. As you can tell, all of these authors are just doing a fantastic job and doing amazing things and going in so many different fun and interesting directions. And that's just the stuff that I can tell you about. There's more in the pipeline, so stay tuned. But as if that wasn't enough, we also have a lot going on in the adaptation realm with TV and film. Becky, my wife, and I have formed a production company, believe it or not, Mythomagic, and we have started exploring ways to adapt my various books into great television and film. And to my delight, we have had some initial success. The first thing that I would bring to your attention, since we're here to talk about Daughter of the Deep, is that the rights have been optioned as a feature film to Disney+. We are working with the team there to make an original streaming movie of the novel. Becky and I will be producing, and I will be writing the script with a co-writer. And that's going to be a really great process. It's going to be difficult because adapting something, as I have learned over the last 2 years, is not easy under any circumstances. But the fact is, I will have a lot of say, and I have a great team, and I am confident that we will bring this adventure to life in a way that you guys will love. So read the book now so you can get excited when the movie comes out. And of course, probably the adaptation news that you all want to know the most about, we've been talking about online for, almost a year and a half now, is the Percy Jackson and the Olympians TV show that is coming to Disney+. We have a studio, we have showrunners for the show, we have a writer's room in place. Becky and I are on board as full producers. We are also in the writer's room every single day. Where we are now is we are outlining the episodes for the first season of the TV show. The first season is going to follow the action of the Lightning Thief, with the idea that if you guys tune in and it has a great viewership and everybody's excited, we will do at least 5 seasons, fingers crossed, that'll follow the 5 books of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So you will finally get to see the entire Percy Jackson saga on the screen. The TV format will give us more space, more time, obviously, than a feature film would, to tell the entire story. And to even give you guys a little background. We're not changing the DNA of the story. It's still Percy Jackson, but it does give us a chance to kind of explore in depth some of the things that you guys have been asking about for all these years. Like, what is this like? And how do these two people get along? And what's the backstory before this character came on the screen? Some of these things we'll get to explore in the TV show. I can't tell you any specifics yet, but I am really excited about it. I think, knock on wood, and I've been a pessimist before about these things, but I think we have something really, really special coming to you. Hopefully not in the too distant future. So stay tuned for more on that. And we're also working on an adaptation of the Kane Chronicles for Netflix. This is, again, we have a great team in place. It's going to be a feature film for Netflix. If it does well, of course, we'll hope to do the Red Pyramid first, and then the other 2 Kane Chronicles books next. Right now, we are working on the script. This is going to be an incredible, incredible show. It will be live action, by the way. Casting will be, of course, something I'll tell you about as soon as I can. And now, drum roll, please. For years, you have been asking me for a novel or a series about one of your favorite characters, Nico D'Angelo. In particular, many of you have been asking for a novel featuring Nico and his boyfriend, Will Solis, or as you guys lovingly call them, Solangelo. Did I say that right? Yeah. So, if you've read The Trials of Apollo, you probably have already read how I've kind of set up for a potential adventure for Nico and Will. And if you haven't read The Trials of Apollo, well, you really need to get on that because there's a lot of good stuff in there. And a lot of haiku, too. Anyway, that's an aside. So what can you expect from the Solangelo novel? Well, a little background. As I was thinking about this book, and as I was sort of outlining it, I have written from Nico's point of view before in The Heroes of Olympus, but I have never told an entire novel from Nico's point of view exclusively. I decided that maybe this is another area where I needed help. I needed another voice, another set of talents in the mix that would make the story more impactful, more true and authentic, and resonate more as Nico deserves. And so I started thinking, what would it be like to find a co-writer who was from the LGBTQ community, who knew the background of Nico and understood his point of view and his reference set more than I ever could, and could also bring writing skills that maybe I didn't have, to the project. I thought about this and I decided that it was really probably the way to go. I have never used a co-writer before. I have never done anything in collaboration with another writer. And certainly I have never let anyone else into Percy Jackson's world to write about my characters in that way. So this was a big step for me. So I talked to my editor about this, and she had a lead on a person that might be interested. And to my delight, Mark Oshiro said that they would be interested in co-writing the Solangelo novel with me. Mark is probably best known for Anger is a Gift. The book is so wonderful. It's just heartbreakingly beautiful. The experiences that Mark talks about, lyrical language, it's just incredible what they've done with the book. And when I read it, I knew that Mark was the right person for this. Mark, fortunately, knows the Percy Jackson world very well. He's quite familiar with Nico D'Angelo. And so we started talking, and I did an outline, gave it to Mark. Mark made notes, sent it back. We've gone back and forth a few times now. Mark is in the process of writing one draft, and then I will come behind that and sort of do my version, and then we'll go back. And so together we are crafting a book about Nico D'Angelo that I think is going to be greater than the sum of all its parts. That's going to be my voice, my character, but also Mark's voice, Mark's character, and something I hope that you guys will just really love. And that's a wrap up of everything that's going on in the Riordan verse and beyond. But now my favorite part of every presentation, it's time for questions and answers. So let's see what's on your mind.
Hey there, Rick.
And hey, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, everyone. I'm Leah of Politics and Prose, and I just thought I'd jump in and share some of our friends' questions with you today.
Awesome. Let's hear what they got.
Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, you betcha. Always. I see what you did there. Okay.
So our first one, let's do this. Our first one is from Eloise, and Eloise asks, why, if you are a Red Sox fan, does Annabeth wear a Yankees hat?
Well, it's a good question. Annabeth is based in New York, so it made sense to me that she would be a Yankees fan. And I didn't follow the Red Sox until many years later when we finally moved to Boston. That was only about 10 years ago. So Annabeth got the jump on me there. So she was a Yankees fan well before I knew I'd be following the Red Sox. But you know, I have a place in my heart for the Yankees too. I think I can grudgingly say my wife is a New Yorker, so you know we enjoy watching both teams.
Okay, so we'll let it go. So our next one is from Caitlin from Annapolis, Maryland, and Caitlin asks, "How does your past teaching experience influence your writing?"
Caitlin, it's hard to think of an area where it doesn't influence my writing. I mean, really everything I do in writing, I think of just as an extension of my teaching. I still have dreams about teaching all the time. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I haven't graded the essays, or I don't have my lesson plans done. So I still really think of myself as a teacher. And every time I write a book, I think, okay, is this going to go over with my readers? And I think of my readers very much like I think of my former students. They're, you know, young readers that I really care about, and I want to make sure that I'm writing something that will be educational, but also will be really fun and get them really excited about learning. So I come to writing pretty much exactly the same way I come at teaching.
Oh, I love that. It's such a great book. And it really shows through in all your books because they're all so much fun. Our next one is from Jaideep from Virginia. And Jaideep asks, "I really like how much humor is included in your writing. how do you come up with the funny ideas to use in your books? And it's a two-parter. Is the narrator, Percy's humor, like your humor in real life?
Yes, it is like my humor in real life. It's a lot like my two sons' sense of humor. So yeah, I mean, reading the books and getting the corny jokes and the dad jokes and all of the silly stuff, that's like spending an evening in the Riordan household. That's what we're like. We joke around all the time. I guess the only difference is when I'm writing the book, I can take time to get it correct. You know how it is when you're talking to somebody and then later you think, I wish I had said this. This was the perfect comeback. Well, when you're writing, you can do that. You always have time to put in the perfect comeback. So Percy's humor is a lot more on point than mine is.
If only we can have that extra
I
time.
know.
That's like, oh, the one time. Our next one is from Riddy, who's in DC, represent.
Cool.
And Riddy asked, if you can fill the Grand Canyon with anything, what would it be?
Wow, Riddy, it's really hard to ask me a question I haven't heard before, and you did. So good job. Gosh, that's a great question. What would I fill it with? Well, I wouldn't want to like destroy the Grand Canyon or anything like that. I wouldn't want to hurt like a natural wonder. Off the top of my head, I would think like clean, fresh water, because the West needs so much water now that maybe if I filled the Grand Canyon with it, it would run downstream and give people something to use and kind of try to replenish everything from the droughts. That's off the top of my head, but great question.
I love that. So thoughtful. Our next one is from Anna, and Anna's from Arlington. And Anna asked, what does this book, how is it different from your previous books that you've written?
It's different in a lot of ways. Yeah, Daughter of the Deep is different in a lot of ways. It's the first time that I have centered the entire story on a female hero, which is something that's long overdue. So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. Obviously, it's science fiction, which is very different than fantasy. Although, I mean, I kind of approached it the same way in that, where I took the mythology and I tried to make it modern. Here I'm taking the novels of Jules Verne, which are also very old and a little dry and hard to get into, and trying to make them kind of seem more fresh and relevant and add a little bit of humor for a more modern audience. But yeah, I mean, talking about science instead of mythology was very interesting for me. I had to do a lot of research, years and years of research, to get to a point where I felt like I could write about this book. But on the bright side, as you guys saw, I mean, the research was pretty fun. So
that was so cool. Thank you again so much for sharing those interviews and those clips. I mean, it makes me want to go down the submersible.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Our next one is from Aubrey in Randolph, New York. And Aubrey asks, can you explain the differences between the houses in Daughter of the Deep?
Well, sure. I mean, they work together. The houses are more like your majors. Like if you're going to college and you have the English department and the math department, it's kind of like that at Harding-Pencroft, except it's a little more complicated. Like if you're a dolphin, you are probably very good at learning languages. You're good at code breaking. You're good at exploration. Your primary sort of trait is probably your curiosity. If you're in the cephalopods, you're really good with your hands. You're a mechanic. You're an inventor. You're a builder. And so you really like taking things apart and putting them back together. Orcas are community builders. They are leaders. They are healers, teachers, librarians, anybody who holds the group together. They're like the support personnel. And the sharks are the military people. They are those that are interested in learning defense and offense and strategy and weapon systems and things like that. So you put all the houses together, and the hope is that you can have a really good crew once you take a ship out at sea. So that's the challenge that Anna's going to face anyway.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait to get to talk to friends about your book. If you could choose a house, what house do you think you would be in?
Oh,
You
dolphin,
go
no
into?
question. No question. I mean, I think it's the only one I'd stand a chance in. I'm no good with machines. I would be terrible as a like a soldier. I mean, I guess I could be an orca. I was a teacher after all. I could do that. But the dolphins, the curious ones, the ones that are interested in codes and languages, I really love that stuff. So I think I would love to try to apply myself as a dolphin. That'd be fun. Plus, dolphins are just cool. So.
Yeah. Cool. Our next question is from Henri in Virginia, and they ask, what is the inspiration for Percy's sword Riptide?
Henri, great question. When I was in elementary school and I was sitting at my desk very bored from listening to whatever it was we were studying, I didn't have anything to like play with except literally my pen. And so I would just sit there and like imagine that I could uncap it and that I would pretend, I would daydream that it was a sword. And I loved the idea that it could just turn into a magical sword and I could jump on my desk and go, aha, and take over the classroom. And so I that just kind of stuck with me for years and years and years. And I figured I would give Percy the weapon that I always wanted to have as a kid.
I love it. Our next one is from Mary, and Mary asks, how long have you had your scuba license, and would you recommend getting one?
I actually started scuba diving in 1999. That was how long ago I first got certified. And in fact, I did it because I was researching a murder mystery that I was writing at the time, set in Austin, Texas. And I wanted a scene that was at the bottom of Lake Travis, which is a really interesting environment. And so I got certified. But then I didn't use the scuba stuff for a while. Many years went by, and I didn't really pick it up again until I started researching for Daughter of the Deep. And then I got back into it, and I loved it even more the second time around. So I have had it like for a long time, but I haven't used it as much as you might think. That there were lots of years there where I wasn't actively scuba diving. But if would I recommend it? I mean, that kind of is up to the person. I mean, if you like the sea and you're interested in animals and you like to swim, then those are all good signs that this might be really great for you. I mean, it's not for everybody. Like my wife would never do this because she doesn't like the feeling of being like in a suit and like all closed up with a mask and having to breathe through an apparatus. That kind of freaks her out. And I get that. It freaks out a lot of people. So the good thing is when you take the certification classes, you'll find out really quickly whether it's something you want to do. And the instructors are super. So I'd say, yeah, I mean, go ahead, give it a shot and see if you like it.
I think you just launched a lot of scuba divers' careers. Our next one is from Annie in Arlington, Virginia. And Annie asks, what inspired you to write characters that were in the LGBTQ plus community? The characters, especially Alex, helped a lot in the process of changing my pronouns. And follow up, also, what inspired you to write about people with disabilities like Huston?
Well, I'm glad that the characters were helpful and that you like them. I mean, with LGBTQ community characters, I really, the motivation isn't any different than it is writing other types of diversity in the books. As I said, I was a teacher, and in 15 years in the classroom, I taught, I mean, just about every kind of kid you can imagine. And when I put characters in the book, I don't just sort of think of them as like a checklist. It's like, well, now I want one of these and one of these. I mean, these are kids I know. These are kids I taught and I cared about. And I watched, and in many cases, I watched them struggle. And middle school can be a really cruel place for a lot of kids, especially LGBTQ kids, if they haven't, I mean, it's really hard. If they're not quite sure, even if they are totally sure who they are, but if they're not quite sure where they are, how they identify, that's a really rough place to try to get by and find support. So I just wanted to honor that. I wanted to say, I remember you guys. I see you, and you can be part of the world too. So, like I was saying with the Nico book, if I'm doing a book like strictly from the point of view of a queer character, I'm not sure I would feel like I was the right person necessarily to tell that story, which is why it was so great that Marco Shiro came on board and is co-writing with me. But in the Percy series and Heroes of Olympus, I felt like at least I could kind of give a huge diverse cast so that I can say, everybody is here. Everybody is welcome. Demigods can be any kind of person you can imagine. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like a lot of friends have seen in your book. So definitely appreciate that. So that leads into our next question. I hope we have time for 2 more. So our last 2 questions. Our next one's from Noreen. Noreen asks, in your Magnus Chase series, what made you write the headscarf as a powerful weapon? That is the first time I could remember anyone portraying it that way.
The hijab that Samira wears, yeah. I thought it would be really interesting if that was a kind of like a cloak of concealment that she could use if she chose as a magic item. I don't know. I wanted her to be a hijabi character. Again, same as with the other types of representation. That wasn't out of nowhere. I mean, it was partly because I've taught a lot of young Muslimas, and I just wanted to kind of include them in the book. But also, there is in Norse sort of history, there is a really strong connection between the Muslim world and the Vikings. In fact, the best written account that we have of the Norse is from an ambassador from the court of the Caliph in Damascus, who went up into Russia and met the Vikings and talked about them and did this huge description. And when you find archaeological sites in Scandinavia, very often you'll find Islamic coins. So these 2 cultures were talking to each other. And so I thought it only made sense to keep them talking to each other. And so Samira was part of my effort to kind of honor them.
I love that. Thank you so much. So I think we have time for one more question. So cool. Our last one is a good run. So our last one is from Diana. Diana is in Mexico. And their question is, how does it make you feel when people come up to you, especially kids and teenagers, and tell you how your books have helped them? Maybe to get through something difficult in their lives, or just to cheer them when they really needed it. Because personally, your books have helped me a lot during these difficult times. So thank you.
Oh, hola Diana, mucho gusto. Thank you so much. Also, that's amazing. Yeah, it always makes me feel incredibly humble and incredibly grateful that, well, first of all, that anybody read my books. I mean, I still don't take that for granted because there were a lot of years there where I was writing and nobody was reading anything I wrote. And so, I'm used to like going to events and like nobody's there except like, a line of empty chairs. And so I still get kind of surprised when I hear, you mean you actually like bought my book and you read it? Wow, thank you. But beyond that, to hear that it helped somebody out, that it got them through a tough time, or that it just cheered them up, or that they saw themselves in the book. I mean, I can't think of a higher compliment. That is so cool. And I'm really, really honored that the characters became yours as much as they are mine, that you let them into your life. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. That was, I feel the same way. So I bet from me, as well as all the viewers, we all thank you so much for all these books that you put out there into the universe. So thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
Sadly, that's all the time we have today. I can go on forever. Thank you so much, Rick, for all your stories, sharing your amazing world with us, and those great clips and all your inspiration for your new book, Daughter of the Deep, as well as all your other adventures.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks to Politics and Prose. You guys are the best.
Oh, yeah. So that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, everyone. Check out the links in the chat box for updated information about picking up your books, as well as checking out his other amazing titles and the imprint titles. And of course, I hope everyone stays safe. I hope you all keep reading widely, expanding your world, and exploring new ones. Thank you again, viewers, and Rick, for such a great evening.
All right, take care, everybody.